Nationwide tonight, the data science team at Johns Hopkins University is reporting nearly 124,000 new cases for the day, more than 1,200 deaths for the day. And remember, those numbers will not be final for hours yet. They will rise in the next few hours. In the hour that I'm on air tonight, more people will die. Yesterday, 1,435 Americans died due to COVID, according to the Johns Hopkins count. And maybe all the numbers are starting to sound the same, day after day, the numbers. They shouldn't, though. They can't. We owe it to the dead and to their families. We owe it to the sick to pay attention, to mourn, to do whatever we can to bring the numbers down, to lessen the suffering of our fellow human beings, our fellow citizens, our fellow neighbors, our countrymen and countrywomen. This is the most important story in America. This is the most important story of our time. Dr. Sanjay Gupta pointed this out to me today. Remember the horrific tsunami in Southeast Asia in 2005? That killed more than 227,000 people. The earthquake in Haiti, 2010, that killed at least 220,000. The Somali earthquake that took nearly 260,000 lives. COVID has killed nearly as many Americans or more Americans than that. So with ICUs filled and the death toll rising, you might wonder, what did the sitting president say about it today, or at least tweet about it? It should come as no surprise, but it is shocking nonetheless. He said nothing, not a word. Aides telling CNN that he is now dejected and downcast, not about the lack of those ICU beds in Utah, I should point out. He's apparently dejected over losing the election. Sources also telling us his children are split over what to do next. Not what to do next about COVID, mind you. No, not about those 1,435 Americans who died yesterday, what to do about that. No, the children are split over what their daddy's next move should be. Should he accept defeat and try to salvage something of his legacy, or continue to make up claims of widespread voter fraud and lie to the very people who believe him most, his base? Keeping him honest, accepting defeat, we should point out, it's not up to him. He was defeated. He lost. He lost in an election that his own Department of Homeland Security today calls the most secure in American history. Let that sink in. The Department of Homeland Security calls it the most secure in American history. In other words, this shouldn't even be a thing, but it is. And as a consequence, we are watching America first give way to me first, and suspecting it was always that way anyway. The president has not spoken publicly for a week. He hasn't received a national security briefing since October 2nd. As far as we know, he's not met with his COVID task force since August 4th. However, he has been sending out one rage tweet after another, and for a change, we're going to read you one just so you can get an idea of what's on his mind the day after more than 1,400 American lives were eased, what he's thinking about. Here's the tweet. At Fox News, daytime ratings have completely collapsed. Weekend daytime, even worse. Very sad to watch this happen, but they forget what made them successful, what got them there. They forgot the golden goose. The golden goose. The most powerful man in the free world, in the middle of the worst mass casualty disaster since the 1918 flu, is tweeting about the ratings of cable news shows and weekend cable news shows. And he's tweeting not even in the third person, but in the third goose. This guy has checked out, at least when it comes to anyone but himself. Think about what he said in that tweet. Very sad to watch this happen. No, he's not talking about COVID. He's talking about ratings of cable news programs. And he says that a lot, that very sad to watch this happen. It's the same as, oh, we'll see what happens. As though he's always just a bystander or a viewer looking at a show, just changing the channels, watching us all live and die, get sick, just watching the show. Criticizing, of course, as you do with shows, but taking no responsibility for any of it. Last night on the program, the New York Times' Maggie Haberman, who began covering Donald Trump back in his real estate days, said something along those lines. She was referring specifically to his state of mind regarding his election defeat, but I think it speaks to more than that. Here's what she said.
He doesn't want to face the fact that the election is over and that he has lost. He also, there is a part of him, and I know that this is hard to grasp for people, even after all these years, but he sort of just likes watching the show, and he likes seeing what's going to happen and whether it's going to turn out differently for him maybe if he just keeps going.
keeps going, watching the show. The president, she says, just likes to watch the show. I mean, think about the level of detachment that suggests. Then remember what he said back in early August about the pandemic.
I think it's under control. I'll tell you what.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
It is what it is. Easy to say if you feel no connection to or responsibility for others. But for someone who just likes to watch the show, well, he can just change the channel and say, oh yeah, it is what it is. What else is on? Or as he later told Bob Woodward, nothing more could have been done. When he said that on the 14th of August, 168,427 Americans had died. Nothing more to be done. The number is now fast approaching 250,000, and the CDC's new combined forecast projects that by December 5th, just 3 weeks away, as many as 282,000 Americans will have died. New forecasting from the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation now is projecting 438,000 deaths by March 1st. The president said nothing more could have been done. Really, nothing. Couldn't think of a thing. Never mind actually developing a national testing and tracing strategy or coordinating supplies of PPE. Couldn't have maybe, stopped holding mass rallies. Couldn't have said perhaps a few words about wearing a mask, other than, quote, I don't see it for myself, which is what he said when he actually was announcing the CDC guidelines all the way back months ago. He immediately undercut it by saying, oh yeah, not for me, but yeah, sure, for you all if you want. Now that he's lost the election, he can't perhaps let the incoming team, which seems to be taking the pandemic very seriously, get briefed and coordinate with their government counterparts. He won't allow that. I mean, that would be something he could do. But the answer, of course, is no. Not for the COVID team, not for anyone, in fact, not even the president-elect. For the safety and security of the country's future, I mean, that's a big deal. But for a president who's checked out, except perhaps for taking a hatchet to the Pentagon and intelligence community, it's really no biggie. If it weren't so sad and so consequential, it would be funny. But for that, there's always White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Bless her heart, as they say in Mississippi, taking us completely through the looking glass and then beyond to a galaxy far, far away. Remember, this is the spokesperson for the White House. Listen to what she said.
Kayleigh, while this is happening, it's been brought up by Senator Lankford, a Republican. He said, listen, give Joe Biden the presidential daily brief. After all, Senator Harris she's on the Intel committee. She's getting, she has high-level security access. Has the president considered that?
I haven't spoken to the president about that. That would be a question more for the White House.
That would be a question for the White House, says the White House spokesperson. That is next level stuff. CNN's chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, joins us now. She is still the spokesperson for the White House, right?
As far as we know, Anderson, she has not held a briefing in some time. She was with the president for that nutty statement he gave in the briefing room 1 week ago tonight. But I think she is of the same mindset that the president is right now. They are dug in. Talking to advisors this evening, Anderson, we do not expect the president at this point, barring some kind of big turnaround on his part, to give up these challenges until after they make their way through the courts in about a week or so from now.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are making their way through the court, like, stuff makes its way through a golden goose. I mean, they're going through the court pretty fast because most judges are just tossing the stuff out because there's no there there.
Right. And falling flat on their face. And when the president is talking to his advisors, yes, he's dejected, he's upset about all of this, he's lashing out at Fox News, he wants to settle scores with people like the CIA director and the defense secretary and the FBI director and so on, but they are also considering some other nutty ideas. For example, this evening I talked to a Trump advisor who said that they have been talking about the prospect of whether electors in some of these individual states could go rogue and choose the president over Joe Biden in some of these states that went Joe Biden's way. I mean, that takes you to the level of, insanity, really, that they're contemplating at this point because the president cannot accept the fact that he lost. At this point, this advisor I spoke with earlier this evening, this advisor said that the president is starting to grasp the reality that he is not going to find a way out of this and that we're nearing the next phase, in the words of this advisor. It doesn't sound like it's going to come fast enough. It sounds like the president wants to drag this out as long as possible to see, as you put it earlier, see what happens.
also have some new reporting about a top official behind the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security statement tonight, calling the election the most secure in American history. What are you learning?
Yeah, well, one individual official that we're focusing on these days, Anderson, is an official by the name of Chris Krebs. He leads an office called CISA, which is basically the cybersecurity arm of the Department of Homeland Security. He's been on Twitter over the last several days debunking Trump world conspiracy theories, upsetting a lot of people inside the president's orbit. And I talked to somebody earlier this evening, an official earlier this evening, who said Krebs has been telling people around him he doesn't care if he's fired at this point. And in the words of this senior administration official, what they're going to be doing in that office and across the Department of Homeland Security, according to this official, is making sure that the integrity of the democratic process is protected, not one individual, meaning the president. Anderson.
All right, Jim.